Nowadays, we can sometimes meet very kind and compassionate people. They won't leave any person or animal in danger. Greetings to everyone on the channel Real Facts, and in today's video, I will tell you some amazing incidents when people have saved poor animals from imminent death. The first story happened in Russian city Voronezh, where residents rescued a pregnant dog, which was walled up alive in a hole under the porch. A husband and wife were returning home when they heard quiet barking. Surprisingly, it was coming from under the ground. It turned out that workers who came to liquidate a pit near the porch of the house for some reason left the dog inside. Maybe they didn't notice it, or they just didn't want to get the animal out. Alexandra and Vadim asked the house administration, but they replied that the work was carried out by another organization, so they couldn't help them. Then the married couple decided to rescue the dog on their own. The rescue operation was successful. They carefully pulled out the pregnant dog named Belka from under the porch. The animal was so exhausted and frightened that it didn't even touch food, but it was really thirsty. Vadim repaired the pit carefully once again. A dog shelter took Belka for rehabilitation, and it will hopefully find new owners there. It can seem to us that nothing bad can happen with turtles in the sea. After all, they are protected by a shell. However, fishermen, surfers, and others very often notice turtles whose body, especially the shell, is covered with clams. They don't let the poor turtles live normally. Having sucked on the shell, clams destroy it and dig directly into their body. Fortunately, kind sailors catch poor animals and rid them of these sea parasites with their hands, knives, and other possible instruments. After that, they release the turtles and they swim away without such a hard burden. Another story I am going to tell you shocked me. I didn't expect that people can be so cruel to animals. A man named Pedro Dennis faced a situation which certainly shocked him. In 2015, he was walking with his dog in a suburb of Paris, as he often did. Suddenly, he noticed a strange pile of land. He saw that his dog was very interested in this pile and even tried to dig at it. At first, Pedro was afraid of what he would find in there, but decided to find out what it was. It is hard to imagine how surprised he was when he saw a dog's head sticking out of the ground. He thought the dog was no longer alive until he heard a faint moan. The poor animal was buried alive. He began to quickly dig the poor dog up. The animal was exhausted and thirsty. It was obvious that it spent many hours underground. The dog was very humble and behaved very calmly during the rescue operation. At the moment when the man was digging the dog's legs, it began to lick him gently and show friendliness. Pedro saw that the dog was tied so that it couldn't get out. The end of the rope was also buried. Very soon the dog was saved, and Pedro took it to a veterinary clinic where he found out that it was a female suffering from arthritis. Pedro felt compassion for her and decided to take her home. He also called the police, which found the former owner of the dog. It turned out to be a guy who was barely 21 years old. He refused to admit what he had done and assured that the animal had escaped and he didn't know how it had ended up in the wasteland. But the police did not believe the guy and found his version implausible. Under French law, he had to pay a fine and spend up to 2 years in prison. I don't know for sure whether he was imprisoned or not, but he certainly got a serious punishment as the public was outraged and created a petition asking for the maximum punishment. Pedro posted a photo of the dog on his Facebook page. Thousands of people, when they saw it, began to feel sorry for the dog. Sometimes human cruelty has no limits. Dogs are known as the most faithful, affectionate, and loyal animals. They don't deserve such ill treatment. Fortunately, the character of this story was lucky. However, there are still many situations with a tragic end for dogs. People get rid of them without even trying to bring them to a dog shelter or to find new owners. In the end, we mustn't forget that we are responsible for those we have tamed. The next incident occurred in Italy in the province of Bologna. A wolf was rescued from the Tagliamento ice river. The animal was found seriously suffering from malnutrition, hind limb paralysis, and 35 lead bullets in his body. The police found the wounded wolf, reported to the municipality about it, and asked for assistance in its rescue. 4 specialists of the Scientific Center of Exotic and Wild Fauna, together with a veterinarian, came to help. After driving about 37 miles, rescuers arrived at the site. The wolf, an adult male, was in icy water close to the coast. The animal was hungry, shocked, and clearly frozen as it was in the water for such a long time. More than that, open wounds were visible on its hind limbs. After examining the wolf, the veterinarian identified cardiopulmonary shock and cardiac arrest. The animal's condition was critical. With no delay, doctors started to do an indirect heart massage and artificial respiration. After several minutes of cardiopulmonary resuscitation, the wolf resumed cardiac and respiratory activity to everyone's surprise. The rescuers placed the wolf on a stretcher and put it on oxygen during its transportation. After that, the wolf, named Navarro, got all necessary medical help. Another story with the rescue of an animal occurred in the territorial waters of Sri Lanka. Naval forces of Sri Lanka didn't expect to see anything like this. While they were patrolling the territorial waters, they noticed a baby elephant. The cub was carried away into the open sea for some reason, and it was 8 miles away from the coast. The elephant held its trunk above the water in order not to drown. It was noticed by a shocked military who decided to send a patrol ship to help the poor animal. The rescue operation lasted 12 hours. Divers of the Navy and geologists took part in it and gave useful recommendations to sailors on how to deal with a drowning animal. They wrapped the poor elephant with ropes and delivered it to the shore, where they took it to representatives of the Wildlife Department for rehabilitation. The following story occurred in Chernobyl in 2012. Tourists who were passing by one pond heard very strange and squelching sounds. Their interest prevailed and they decided to see what it was. It turned out that an elk fell into a trap. It was evident that the animal was completely exhausted. Tourists urgently asked for help and said that the animal was swimming but couldn't get out of the pond between 4 and 5 power units of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The police and the state emergency services went to help the elk. By that time, the animal had already lost consciousness, but the men reached the animal on time by boat and dragged the unconscious elk to the land by its antlers. Under the care of veterinarians, the animal came to its senses and headed towards the forest. Another case happened in the national park in the northeast of Thailand, where the employees had to face a very difficult task: to save 6 elephants who couldn't get out of a deep hole with mud. The staff of the national park couldn't take action immediately. That's why they decided to leave several people with the elephants at night to protect them from predators, while others went to seek for additional help. The next day, the staff returned with special tools. They needed 4 hours to put up a slightly sloping mound at one of the edges of the hole by means of picks and shovels. All this time, the herd of elephants from which these cubs came from was roaming nearby. When the mound was ready, the elephants came up and ran into the forest to their herd. Only one baby elephant lingered close to the hole, turned to the people for a moment, and then also disappeared among the trees. Apparently, the animal thanked its saviors this way. After all, without their help, everything could have turned out completely different. Later, a video clip made by one of the rescue participants was published by the Department of National Parks of Thailand. The next incident I am going to tell you happened in the jungle of Brazil on the Amazon River. While soldiers were rafting on the river, they saw a jaguar cub. The animal was so little that the soldiers couldn't just pass by and leave it in danger. At that time, the river Amazon was deeper because of the tropical rain season, and that was the reason why the jaguar cub was drowning. It was close to death. Probably some people would have just sailed by, thinking that the jaguar, even such a little baby, is a dangerous predator. However, the Brazilian soldiers decided to take action and save the poor animal, which was wounded and in pain. If they hadn't helped the jaguar, it would have drowned in a few minutes. It was interesting that the animal immediately understood that the soldiers were trying to help, so it didn't resist the saving operation of the Brazilian soldiers. Risking their lives, the soldiers managed to rescue the cub and then delivered him on board their boat. At first, they wanted to let the animal go to the jungle, but the baby jaguar was wounded and very exhausted. It was widely known that poachers were operating in the forests throughout Brazil. Therefore, leaving this poor animal alone could be dangerous. The soldiers decided to take the jaguar to the army. It was surprising that the soldiers were allowed to adopt the jaguar cub and own it as a service dog in the armed forces. Now the jaguar is a very strong adult animal, but it doesn't forget about its rescuers. The predator loves his soldiers very much. He still lives in the military unit and protects the soldiers from enemies. The jaguar got a name, Jigataya, which means foundling. Today, Jigataya is an adult and can be dangerous. Nevertheless, it is a very kind and cute animal. The last story for today happened in India. A group of photographers were shooting wildlife in the forest and suddenly spotted a wrenching picture. A young wolf was seeking for help. Its head was stuck in a large plastic jar. Having found no other solution, it had no choice but to ask people for help. Tanay Panpalia, interested in photographing wildlife, took a picture of the poor animal. She noticed the wolf sitting alone under a tree. At the same time, it was not scared of the people, and apparently it wanted to be noticed and saved from the so-called plastic trap. Due to starvation and hot weather conditions, the young wolf had already lost most of its energy. The photos, which were taken a few years ago, took into consideration the current important problem of environmental pollution by plastic waste. Therefore, Tanay decided to share them with everybody right now. The woman mentioned that she had always dreamt of seeing a real wolf in the wildlife. However, at that time, she managed not to just take a photo of the predator, but provide proof of the plastic disaster that is currently happening in the world. Having seen the poor animal, the group of people took action to save it. First, they reported to the rescue service of the forest everything that had happened. After that, they were watching the animal and the wolf pack for 2 hours so as not to lose them until the professional help arrived. The rescue service soon arrived at the site. Having covered the body of the wolf with a rag, they carefully removed the plastic bottle from its head. The predator didn't suffer from any injuries at all. The whole rescue operation lasted about 3 hours. While some rescuers were helping the wolf to get free, the others were pouring water over the animal's body to cool it down. When the wolf got free from the annoying plastic jar, it joined the pack and they all went away. That's all for today. Dear friends, please be kind and remember that good and evil always come back as a boomerang. Share this video and maybe it will encourage someone to do something good.